about Paul is that Paul's whole idea, not idea only, but his whole his viewpoint is that he was the apostle for the Gentiles. So that includes everybody in the world. So that's what and he admonishes people why they are not treating people the way Jesus wanted them. So I
Right.
don't understand.
If you claim to be a Christian, you have to follow what Christ said.
Mhm.
And that's, in Matthew 25, he talks about the corporal works of mercy: feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the sick, bury the dead. Um, and he also talks about the Good Samaritan. You know, everybody is your neighbor, and you have to treat everybody, treat everybody well. And when people do things that that require forgiveness from you, you have to give it unconditionally. Those are the teachings of Jesus. And to have the evangelicals claim to be Christians and not believe the words of Christ, that's an oxymoron, actually, with the accent on moron.
Oh, I see. but
Okay.
their word counts at the moment. So
Yeah, but yeah, they can say whatever they want, but they don't act like they're supposed to.
okay.
Well, there's got to be some way uh, to justify the two viewpoints. One, this is what Jesus said, and two, that person I don't have to take care of. And the question, I don't know the theology. What is that? Is it that that person is not is a second class human, or is it that person is evil, or what is it that allows them to say these are the words of Jesus, but it doesn't count in this case?
It's the same as how whites used to look at blacks, that
Right.
they don't exist, and it's just wrong.
Well, the Nazis thought of
You claim to be
themselves.
Christian, you have to. If you claim to be Christian, you have to follow the words of Jesus,
But
and you can't make excuses for that.
but what I hear evangelical people saying is that you have to believe in the cross, and as long and works don't count. So that's a distinction they
Wrong.
make. That's what
That's
that's a
that's
distinction.
exactly wrong.
No, but that's the distinction, because they quote passages and say it only says believe. If you believe, then things will follow, but works don't get you salvation. So they keep on saying this over and over again, and I kind of wonder about all that. And here you are. You can explain it away.
I can believe that I can believe that they consider themselves religious, but they can't consider themselves Christian if they have that belief.
That's what I hear. Maybe I'm not a Christian myself, but I hear them say these things. That they actually. I listen to various not interpretation. They said there's no interpretation. Look at the passages. They say it says only believe. They doesn't say works. So that's what they run with.
Except Jesus said works count.
Well, I don't
That's
know
what
where.
Jesus said.
Yeah.
And if you claim to be a Christian and follow Jesus, you have to follow his words. Now, not everybody does everything that they wish they did, and when they don't do it, they have to repent for their omissions. But if you try to say that works don't count, then that's fine for your philosophy, but it's
Mhm.
not a Christian philosophy.
I mean, if you look, if you extend this, the works as something which is important. It again brings back to what I would say from the Hindu philosophy, that if you just keep on praying, it's not going to help you unless you actually help the service the people who need your help, because you need, if you don't, that's what Mother Teresa observed and practiced actually. Same philosophy what Hindus have, that if you don't practice what you are saying, it's useless, because you got to practice, help, serve, without any without any uh, idea of getting a return from the service you are providing, because you are serving the humanity in terms of God. Don't
Yes.
ask something in return.
The the two philosophies are exactly the same.
Mhm. I mean, that's why where the karma comes in. If you do well, just eating is not, you are not doing well. You gotta sow the seed, meaning you gotta serve people, help people without demanding something in return. If you demand something in return, you are basically not doing work. You're not doing work for your own salvation.
In Ashkenazi Judaism, I assume it's Sephardic as well. One of the chief things that the that the culture says is that charity is paramount,
Mhm.
and there are levels of charity, and the highest level of charity is to give something to charity, not that no one knows you gave, and you don't know who it benefits,
Mhm.
so that there's no way to for somebody to have to feel the holding, and you don't have any way of being able to say, well, you owe me. Um, so it sounds like the three different cultures
Mhm.
tend to agree on what some of the primary things are.
I mean, that's interesting point you brought up, because that's one of the things that people will always say, that I would give something in charity, but anonymous, so that
Mm-hmm.
nobody knows who gave. And
Right.
but you when you look at the current right wing wave that has gone through the world, this thing has kind of is slowly being sidelined. That's what worries me.
How do you? I'm sorry, I'm not
No,
quite sure. I
what I'm saying is
and
that what I'm saying is that right wing thinking is that what we experience currently in the whole world, actually, one end of the globe to the other end, if there are two ends of the globe, because it's easy to go back to the scriptures and say, no, this is what it said. But then you look at the in practice and they say, well, if I don't get anything in return, I will not do these things. And if I don't do this, then I gotta, if you gotta hate this group of people and love this group of people. That way I'm protecting my nationality, I'm protecting my tribe. So this has become kind of an interesting new phenomenon throughout the world, protecting your tribe,
well, I
nationalistic
think that's
system.
an old phenomenon.
Now, but it is an old phenomenon, but it has caused resurgence in politics. That's what I'm trying to say. And
Because the whole idea of a community is that it is not just your family, uh, not just your clan, if you will, an
yes.
extended family, but it's people with whom you share some common goals or experiences.
Hmm.
And when you expand the community out, you eventually get a nation. And one of the things that the right wing is definitely against is the globalism
Mhm.
which the concept there was we're all part of the real extended family called humanity. Now, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that we can debate. But the thrust of history up until now has been to do just that.
Yes, and that's what I was trying to say. That's what has been the thrust to be more and more inclusive. It takes time, but I think as Paul pointed out earlier that there was a time when you could rationalize that black people didn't exist, or the so-called Native Americans didn't exist, so they were the other. And now you have to, it's kind of by force, people are being forced to reckon with the situation that no other people also exist. And how long
Well,
will that take to sink in?
well, it's the old one step forward, the two steps forward, one step back, which is where I think we are now. At least I hope that's where we are now, because that indicates that the next reversal will go a little further than we did previously. Um, previously, in the 1960s, there were tremendous changes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a de facto, and certainly even de jure attitude that certain groups weren't as good, weren't as human as other groups. And they changed that. Now it appears we're trying to go back to at least a de facto rather than de jure. Maybe eventually de jure as well will be coming. I would like to think that that will be turned around, and the groups that are now openly saying, you know, this group is not as good as that group, or is evil, or isn't really human, they will go back underground and hopefully slowly fester and die. But they're not going to go away in the foreseeable future. But at least if they have to be embarrassed when they're shown to be like that, then we can begin to make some real progress.
Well, what is it? The Declaration of Independence, our own Declaration of Independence says that all people are created equal. You know, it says men, but it means people.
Well, even there, they didn't. That's not what they meant, because
that's what they said, even though they didn't
right,
do it.
right. But
you know, they had slaves and they
right,
persecuted
that's what I was thinking.
Native Americans.
Native Americans, some of the Europeans who came were considered, just somebody to stick in the factory. And one of the things that I think we need to recognize is when the African Americans say the society and the wealth was built on the backs of the slaves, they're right to some extent, but it wasn't just the slaves. It was the people who came from Europe who slaved in the factories.
You had Chinese come and build the railroad.
Huh?
You had Chinese build the railroad.
Chinese built the railroad.
And then they were booted out.
The Europeans made the cloth and the clothing.
Yeah, textile mills, yes.
Yeah, and they did it as almost not chattel slaves, but indentured servants. They had to pay their way to come over. And the problem is we have to see everybody as at one time or another, they were treated like crap. And that doesn't mean that they get to treat the next group like crap. They should learn that what was happening to them was bad. And nobody should do that.
But they do it anyway.
We begin that, transformation, then we have the beginnings of really an equal society. And I don't mean equal that everybody is exactly the same and has exactly the same stuff. I mean that everybody has equal opportunity to excel. Most people aren't going to do that for a variety of reasons, but they had the chance.
Yeah. I think the big problem is that so many people in the back of their mind have, I'm not doing all that well, but at least I'm not like that person, that other person. And
Uh,
there's always somebody below me, so I can feel a little bit better about myself. And
Southerners in the
that
Civil War,
philosophy is,
many, basically were fighting to keep slavery. Not that they would ever have a slave. There's no way they could afford it, but they weren't. They weren't that person. They were a real human being.
yeah.
And somewhere along the line, we got to figure out how to break that cycle.
But in in the end, the inequality is never going to go away. You can have you can devise a system to provide, to allow and provide equal opportunity, but that does not guarantee that everybody will be equal, as you pointed out earlier, Bob.
Well, but it now comes down to, if I didn't succeed, it wasn't because that person wouldn't let me. It's because circumstances or me,
something else, yes,
didn't work out. And maybe that's harder to deal with than to say it's all that other guy's fault. And if I just got rid of him, by the way the Nazis did their best, then everything would be great.
yes. I mean that, but that means that that part is a lot of education has to seep uh, down the strata of the society to understand that it is not that guy's fault. It could be that the way I am or what circumstances I am in, maybe because of the way I deal with things or the way I adapt to things, or the way I was, where I was born, all those, although I was given equal opportunity, but I could not avail them of them. So that's, it becomes complicated there. But but as long as the society does not erect barriers, you could, at least the society at large can stay, be happy at that level, that we are not erecting barriers to prevent people from progressing.
Right. Well, we have another problem, and that is that technology is making much of the population unnecessary. The jobs that are being lost have been lost over the past 50, 60 years, are being lost to technology.
Well, this is interesting you bring this up, because the same technology, although it is eliminating jobs, but it's also creating a several tier society that you have. We see this now, actually. You have areas of United States where you have very good connectivity, and so you can interact with them. But then other places there is no connectivity or zero connectivity. So you have these at least three different tiers of society, where it's not their fault, but the way the system is built that has erected these barriers. And in order to get rid of those barriers, that will need a lot of investment from the society. A lot of laws have to be changed. And if you go to Native American reservations, they don't have any of this stuff which we take for granted. And you go to rural areas in the United States, you don't have any connectivity, you don't have other amenities what we find in an urban setting. So it has kind of, although we talk about equal opportunity, we have a long way to go.
Right. Well, I was thinking a little further down the road.
Mhm.
The way we judge ourselves is what we can do as an employee. Someone who can do something. I can dig a faster ditch. I can add numbers faster. I can sing prettier. What do you do when we don't need all those things and we have tons of people who don't have a job, or their job is basically keeping them busy for 8 hours a day so they don't get in the way of everybody else? We have to figure out a different way to determine that we have succeeded, that we have accomplished something, we are of value.
I,
And
mhm.
that's not being addressed, at least not in the mainstream today.
Well, you have to go
Everybody's
back
saying,
to
well,
Carl. You have to go back to Carl Jung or somebody to ask such a question, because he talks about how the main purpose of human existence is to basically illuminate your own being. It's kind of a fascinating stuff when you read what he talks about. It's and so I don't I not, I shouldn't say I don't. I don't understand completely, but looks like it might have to be. We may have to turn towards a philosophical meaning of life rather than work-related life. That's what I'm thinking because you are right, right?
and if I can figure out what that was, I start promoting it. I just don't know where we need to go. We have gotten to the point where, for a fair percentage of the world population, not all by any
Yes.
means, not even half, but a fair percentage of the world population does not need to quote work
Mhm.
for survival.
It used to be,
Uh,
now not. Yes.
I'm sorry.
I mean, what I'm saying, it used to be that you had to walk 10 miles to get a pot of water or get a tumbler of water. But now water is right here. I don't have to go all the way. And so that much work toil is gone. And then I don't have to go to the factory. I can immediately press a button and something can be printed in my house. Uh, I don't need to go anywhere. But then that's where your question is driving. What is the meaning of life then? What am I worth?
Oh, I will accept that, because everything, when I was growing up, and even today, everybody sees themselves in terms of what do you do,
Yes,
or possibly
that's
what did you do. And that's how we see each other. But what happens if someone, perfectly good person, doesn't do anything, quote, productive, doesn't produce any goods or help to produce any goods or whatever, just is a consumer, but also is someone who does other things, maybe what a monk.
what.
The whole idea of a monk, that they go off and they separate themselves from the world. And well, Paul, you'd be able to speak to this better than I, but they pray and they try to understand.
Well, they try to be self-sufficient by producing,
Wine.
uh, you know, liqueurs
Yeah.
and jellies, and they grow their own food. So, and there are lots of groups like that. Not
Right.
necessarily monks, but you know, uh, sisters are the same thing, and there are other. All religions have these types of
Yeah.
organizations.
Right, but do they see them? They see that they do for their own little community. So they have a work function. They see at least part of their existence based on what they're doing. What happens when they're not doing anything? When there isn't anything to do? Let me change, because somebody will say, well, they're layabouts and they're people on welfare and they don't do anything. What if there is nothing to do? Then what?
Uh, okay, I don't understand what you mean by nothing to do. I just enumerated a number of things that
Right,
they do for physical subsistence,
right.
and they also they also pray, and you know that's and they socialize, and uh, the, they consider the the prayer and self denial of things to be productive.
Okay, so they find a different, the self-sufficiency without question, but that the prayer and self-denial is a thing that they do. But let's say, just arbitrarily, that they sat in their room and people other than monks brought them food and brought them clothing and brought them a chamber pot. And there wasn't anything that we consider productive that they were doing. Maybe praying is their be all and end all. I don't know.
Um,
Extend that to the fact that um, instead of having a wife who cooks my meals, there's a robot who cooks my meals. And my biggest involvement, not providing the food or anything, is just saying what it is I want to eat today. They cook it, they bring it to me, they take the dishes away, they get rid of it, and I do nothing but sit in my bed.
Well, that's where the monk's life is important, actually worth looking into, because in India there are monks
Mhm.
who essentially don't cook. Somebody brings them food, and they are supposed to be going inwards to find out what is more important than this outside world, and then they help people. It's essentially psychological. Again, going back to Carl Jung, talking about psychological feedback of survival, of finding out what is larger than this universe. Is it traveling inwards and finding out unity with the universe, or unity with God? You could think that way. And so that way they they're also working, but they're not engaging in producing goods. That's what I think Catholic monks do, or our brothers do. They will engage inwards rather than and serve, rather than be becoming productive in this common sense we talk about.
Well, in a sense, you could define that in a productivity mode. If they share what they learn, then they're educators.
Yes, that's what most of the monks do. Actually, they teach people how to be good Christians, or good Hindus, or good Jains, or good Buddhists. And that's what Dalai Lama goes our whole world. He gives talks about how you should love everybody. I
Hmm.
mean, that's what he does.
I'm not sure that I'm much closer than I was to the pro to the post. Um, I'm trying to define a term. The post survival
Yes.
side.
What I was gonna add to this is, maybe the best person to answer this question is George Soros. He has billions of dollars,
Yeah.
and what is his objective? What is his aim? And what does he do? And talk to Bill Gates. He doesn't have to work. He has billions, and what does he do?
well, he does lots and lots of things.
Yeah, both of them do lots of things, and
Um,
but they don't really
and
go until the
but
land.
yeah, but they're not in uh, like what Bob is talking about. Bob is talking about somebody who um, simply gets everything provided to him because the world has a surplus, not enough people, you know, or too many people for the number of useful jobs to do, and the world's surplus will then feed them and clothe them give them a place to live. And Bob's talking about 2,000 years from now, not not 20 years from now.
Thank God.
I'm not so sure of. Robots are becoming more and more pervasive, and they're doing more and more of what the normal human being does. And at some point, they are going to become responsible for the growing of food and distributing it, et cetera, et cetera. And then what do we do? Robots already repair themselves, or other robots repair some of the robots. At some point, human beings are going to be superfluous.
I mean,
well,
what we see
maybe they'll do the things that maybe they'll do the things that are happening in female prisons right now, and like in you've heard of that. They're
no.
What is
I'm
that?
not sure what you're referencing.
They're neutralizing women.
Where?
Without, well, California is one, but a lot of the women that are coming in across the border, they're taking out their uterus.
That's the ICE thing.
Yeah.
There's
What do you mean neutralizing?
They can't bear children.
How can that be?
By an operation.
Is women under ICE control in at least one of the facilities, whenever they go in, often when they go in to see a gynecologist, he tells them they have this thing or that thing and they need a procedure to fix it. And when they have the procedure, it turns out to be a partial or complete hysterectomy.
Is that really true? I never
It's
heard
true.
of this. I never heard of this.
There are legal cases about it right now. There are like 17 women who are suing because they said this happened to them and they had no idea that this was going to happen. They may have given consent to go in and have some minor procedure, but when they come out and they are neutered, they seem to be upset for reasons I really can't understand.
Wow, I didn't know this. Wow, this is news to me. But the thing is, this is what was happening. I mean, this is one of the objectives of the what is it called, the society. I forgot the name of the society. They wanted to do that for everybody, for all the undesirables.
Yeah, but the Nazis were in favor of that as well.
Well, they were doing it, but there was a society created to advise and deal with it.
Okay, I can't comment on that. I don't know what you're referencing.
I forgot the name, so I can't.
Okay, but it's essentially eugenics.
Eugenics. It's a eugenics society. Yes, thank you. I was wondering what's the eugenics. I mean, that's what the eugenics movement was meant to do, exactly that. But I can't understand that it's happening now.
Well, it probably never stopped happening. The original group was social Darwinists.
Mm-hmm.
They bought into the idea of evolution, and then they decided that those who were superior, pick your way of judging that, were being held back by those who were inferior. So you should
obviously
prevent the inferior from reproducing and screwing up the world.
That's one of the arguments. I mean, I won't name the groups, but that is one of the arguments a few groups make against the Planned Parenthood. They claim that was the society created to kill off Black people.
Okay.
That is they cite the writings of the founder president who started, I forgot the name, her name either also. And they cite her writings, but when you read the writings, they are brought out of context. And of course, when you bring things out of context, that's exactly what they will translate into.
Yeah.
Uh, oh well. I hope, like hell, that we don't get too far into that kind of a world, because remember Rwanda. First, one group was in charge and they tried to wipe out the other, and then the downtrodden group took over and they tried to wipe out the first one.
Hutus and
So
Tutsis.
payback is a bitch.
Tutsis and Hutus.
Yeah, and I don't remember which was which.
Yeah.
But the net result was that you had a bloodbath and no one came out a winner.
Yes. Sad story, but that does humans do these things.
Right. And we've got to go beyond that, whether it be by religion or by logic or by whatever. We have to go beyond that, and we can't say you did this bad thing to me, so I'm going to punish you. I'm a believer in Black Lives Matter. I'm a believer that the police are an important part of society and need to be supported. You can believe in both.
You can believe in both, and that's perfectly logical, but that doesn't mean that you should go out and burn down the police stations. I mean,
then you're not believing in both. You're only believing in the idea that people have to be punished instead of saying problem has to be fixed. And everybody, including the people that hurt you before, are part of the solution. That's what happened in South Africa.
Yes, that's
Mandela came in and he basically said, we're all South Africans. And at least for a time, there was a place for everybody, and they were able to adjust the society to accept the fact that there were people who had been part of it before who are now part of it. Unfortunately, when Mandela died, his ideas didn't survive.
Yes, things have not played that well after he died, because there probably, I mean, not probably, because there are lots of built-in resentment across the board, and people can't seem to reconcile things. And it's not only there. That's what I was saying. When you look at it across the world, people have thoughts about that. They given the opportunities to people who never had opportunities, have prevented my group from advancing because I had all the opportunities up to this point. So because of the other group coming up, I should retaliate. I should be given opportunities, and the other group should not be now given any opportunities. So it has that the concept of providing equal opportunities has backfired in that sense over time, because now people are resenting that there is this affirmative action. What people call affirmative action has resulted in a lot of people saying, well, you know what, because of the other groups who were not supposed to get these jobs, now they are getting jobs, our jobs are gone. Women are getting into the armed forces. Women are now doing all the jobs which all the men should have gotten. So naturally, we should crush that movement. All the black people used to be seen nowhere. Now you see them on TV. You should get rid of all that, because now my opportunities have been quashed. So it's kind of interesting when you listen to people, how that argument gets coated, sugar coated, so that you swallow it very well.
Well, I think that they have a point that if there's a limited number of things,
Yes,
and you give somebody who never was competing for it an opportunity or maybe even a slight advantage, then Others who in the old society would have gotten it no longer are getting it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true.
That's
you have
true,
to,
but it's a function of greed also, because like for instance, the elimination of um, unions, that has fostered the belief of the job goes to the person who's willing to do it for the least amount of money, and instead of having a uniform distribution. So people will be fighting for the bottom as opposed to trying to get themselves up. And the people that benefit from that are the the owners and the CEOs.
Right.
And
at the same time, for a while, the union served a tremendously important purpose. But after a while, it stopped necessarily serving that purpose. It became just a counterweight, and not a very effective one, to the employers. And they were keeping perfectly qualified people from getting jobs because they weren't union members and they didn't have whatever it took to become a member of the union. Nothing's perfect. Anything you try, even if it's for the best of reasons with the best of planning, over time, it will become less than perfect. And you just have to keep improving. And you also have to have an agreement, which we don't seem to be able to do, on what is the greater good.
Well, let me give you an example. Boeing decided to, the Boeing company decided to expand and have not, their planes not necessarily built in Seattle, but they went to one of the southern states. I think it was Georgia. The workmanship in Georgia, it wasn't as good as the workmanship in Seattle, but they did it for a lot less. And that's one of the reasons why some of the Boeing planes have gone down, because of the workmanship. Oh yeah. I used to work for Boeing, so I can I can see that.
Is that a deficit in training? They don't train them well, or what happens?
It's probably a deficit in training. Solder joints aren't made exactly the way they're supposed to, and guys are being paid less to do the same thing. But why are they being paid less to do the same thing?
So the QC is gone, quality control.
Yeah, and the 737s that went down, I think that was simply something that was missed.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was that Boeing didn't require people to have training. The pilots to have that training. They could have they allowed airlines to take the cheaper way out and not bother with that specific training. Pilots go in for training at the Boeing facility, and what is presented is a function of what the customer is willing to pay for.
I see. Oh, so the customer goes for the cheapest part, I would imagine.
Yeah. And oh, we know how to fly. Well, they didn't know how to fly those 737s that went down.
It's 780.
No, 737 something.
737 is pretty reliable plane.
They haven't sold any 737 this year.
Some Max. There was some number with a Max on it. What is that?
87.
737.
I think it's
I thought 787.
No. There were 737s that went down.
Max.
Yeah, it's the new 737 where they did something in the autopilot
Mm-hmm.
to prevent you from going down. But if you didn't buy that feature, you didn't have the feature that prevented you from going down.
Well, that's in a way
They didn't have the
stupidity.
training to tell them.
Wow. Hmm. So that does that mean the customer who bought the plane opted out, and the Boeing did not insist both ways?
Well,
in
not
addition,
only that, but
AA said
there
whatever
was
training,
something that was wrong in the autopilot design that would allow this, that never should have happened.
I see. Uh-oh. So
That was probably a function of getting the plane out. But
oh.
these kinds of things are design oversights that get fixed, and it shouldn't require a crash, at least not more than one crash to fix it.
Mm-hmm. And particularly if they
well,
knew all this.
Yeah.
evidently the American planes either had the part that you were talking about or it got better training because none of the American
Both.
planes went
They
down.
had both.
Oh, they had both.
Plus, there was also a deficiency, so they had and they were enabled to quickly turn off the autopilot and fly it manually.
Wow. So if you had,
Okay.
so you had to pay to get the training, pay to opt in for that particular component also at the same time.
Yeah.
Of course, the customer goes for the cheaper one to begin with, so that's the end of that part. No wonder planes went down.
And
Well,
the other thing is that they haven't fixed it yet. They haven't fixed it, meaning they haven't fixed it and they haven't tested it. You have to have test flights.
So what would fix it?
well, if
I
it's
don't
for
know,
fix,
some feedback loop.
Oh. So it's not just software issue then.
It's a software issue. Yeah.
It is. Oh wow. So the wiring is there, but the software is not there.
Yeah. I mean, the software takes inputs from all over the airplane and decides what to do.
So if it is just a software issue, isn't it easily fixable or no? It must be more complicated than I could think of.
Yeah. It's fixable, and then once you fix it, you have to test flight it.
I see.
And you have, and that takes a long time, and it also takes, when you fix software, you're always in danger of an unintended error someplace else.
Yes. So how do you test for
have
that?
To go through the entire litany of, you can't just look to see, did I fix this problem? Then we're fine. By fixing this, did I cause some other problem? So they have, and you have to prove it to the FAA that you did it, and also the FAA has to be the actual individuals of the FAA have to be knowledgeable enough to know that they've tested every possible combination, of shifting weight in the airplane. Maybe a whole bunch of people decide to go to the bathroom at the same time, or they have to. They have so many different things to think about.
So that means you have to run test flights every time then for a long time.
Yeah, I mean that's you have to run test flights, yes, and that is what they always do. You usually take, to get an airplane from the time it's able to fly till you're able to deliver it. That might be 12, 15 months.
Wow. So while designing the aeroplane, there are certain basic design parameters that ensure the plane is going to fly, right?
Sure.
But
And then,
then,
Right. You go through air and you do simulators, and the simulator basically has all the things that can happen, and then the software and the pilot together figure out how to deal with it.
yeah.
so does that mean the simulator is is created to really simulate what the plane is going to do, or is just a little bit of simulation?
No, no, no. It has to simulate what the airplane will do under almost any circumstance.
Oh, so that means
So you're talking about a massive amount of software that has to be written
wow.
or corrected.
Right.
Huh.
My
So,
understanding was
That's before you go up in the air.
mhm.
After you're, then when you go up in the air, you have to show that the simulator works by trying every one of these things that the simulator is supposed to take care of.
Wow. So that means you have to
a test
have people who
is
can use the simulator, then people who can go and become pilots, and people who
right.
can be the engineers. It's a tall order, actually.
Yeah,
The test pilots are very good and nuts for putting
Nuts.
themselves in the situation where they're up there and they don't know for sure what's going to happen. But if there's a mistake made, chances are they aren't going to survive it.
No, but doesn't the test pilot have an eject button or no?
yeah. Not an eject. No, you can't eject from a commercial airplane. You can turn off systems,
And then what? Then get
then
out?
fly it manually.
No, but what happens if it is manually impossible to fly?
Then it'll never make it out of the simulator.
Oh, I see.
A
Oh, okay.
simulator was
And
properly designed.
and the other thing is that uh, by now that information is so well known by everybody that
Hmm.
it's you know
So there is
it's
no.
easy to, it's easy to fly much easier to fly with all the systems off, but that
Oh,
means
it's all right. Wow. I never flew a plane.
you're right.
Did you fly a plane when you worked for
No,
Boeing? No? Okay.
no, I was in the autopilot group.
That's a good way. So that means in autopilot it just goes.
I'm sorry.
When you are in autopilot mode, it just goes, right? You don't have to.
Yeah, well, it has inputs from all kinds of inputs. You can set the direction. You can set um, you want to fly at 31 degrees off north, or you want to do all kinds of different things, and then you can turn it on.
I see. So you can just be watching it,
Yeah,
having a cup of coffee.
right. And there's a button right on the handle so that if the plane doesn't do what you want, you can just click the button, and now you're totally manual.
Wow. Okay.
By the way, in the very near future, you're going to have a car that's going to be in a similar mode. They already have cars that can park themselves, um, drive without your hands on the wheels, etc.
But why do we hear this Tesla problem every time that there is a crash with Tesla? Is that Tesla design problem, or is it really a software problem there too?
Yes, uh, as with something brand new,
Oh, I see. Okay.
don't know what you don't know, and the environment in which it expects to find itself isn't necessarily there. For example, one of the things that the autopilot in a car expects is white lines, so it knows to when it's going straight and when it's not. Well, these white lines get wiped out, and occasionally there's rain or snow, and the car can't make out what the white lines are. That's one example. Another example is that the radar that keeps that tells you what's going on in front of you
Mm-hmm.
may not necessarily, for example, know that this soft body in front of it is really there because it doesn't ping back the same way as a hard body would.
Oh,
There have been
okay.
several examples that I've heard in the last couple of years where a car plowed into an individual. And it's probably because the radar didn't recognize there was anything in front of it.
That is sad. But I hope the technology becomes better because we all are getting old, and so we need a car that can drive by itself.
That's not
That's
clear.
why they revise software that are going that's going to be used to drive the car, to steer the car.
Okay.
And there are advantages. The software doesn't get sleepy. I was driving down to New Jersey and back this weekend, and I was in the car for 4.5 hours without stopping. And you
Wow.
could tell that I wasn't as good a driver at the end as I was at the beginning. I was sufficient because I got where I was going, but I'm not sure that I was necessarily keeping up with things around me as well as I was at the beginning.
Was there a lot of
And
traffic or no?
no, luckily it was gorgeous driving both ways. It was very little
Oh.
traffic. Um,
Hmm.
but other times that I've done the same trip and the traffic's been heavy, and I would have loved to have a car that would sit through the stop and go. Um,
Hmm.
so I may be an early adopter.
Well, that's
Mm.
good. I mean, that's what I was wondering is that means if the well, if you are willing to buy a Tesla, it's supposed to be a good car. I don't know, but
Yeah, it doesn't do self driving for one very good reason,
oh,
not that you'd think of. They
what is
haven't figured out the insurance. Who's
oh,
liable if the car gets into an accident when it's an autopilot?
wow, that's a big one.
Yeah. And until they resolve that, all the technology in the world isn't going to make a great deal of difference.
But they say that there are these trucks which are on autopilot. Does that mean their insurance system is different, or is
I
that because there's a
don't know, and
driver
I don't
there?
know if they're necessarily actually out on the road commercially.
Oh,
They
I
may
see.
still be in test because we know that these things are being tested.
Hmm. So we won't see real autopilot, not auto, no driver cars and trucks soon.
That's not clear. I don't know that they're close enough to deal with city traffic. If for no other reason, if they're going down the road, how do they know where my driveway is? How do they know my driveway doesn't have white lines or anything? How do they know to turn in? How do they know when to stop at the end?
How do they know how to avoid an irrational driver
Right,
driving a different vehicle,
right. I mean, if
a
somebody
drunk
cuts
driver?
or rams or comes up behind you and uh, essentially touches bumpers trying to get you to move. And do you move in that situation? Do you always move? Do you occasionally move?
Oh, that's
Uh,
complicated.
yeah,
Yeah.
uh, I don't know how they're going to work it out. I'm sure they will come up with some uh, form of protocol so that the software knows what to do in each situation that somebody's thought of.
I mean,
Maybe you do move and you run, and you approach the car in front of you. And the Tesla is so powerful, it can push the car in front of you.